Only in Kentucky could one small county be named for the last surviving signer of the Declaration of Independence, be home to one of the oldest brick houses on the Ohio River, and end up home to a general whose family story runs straight through Valley Forge and the Mexican War. Hi, I'm Michael. I want to teach you a little bit more about Kentucky, one county at a time, all 120 of them. And today, we're talking about Carroll County. Carroll County was formed in 1838 from pieces of Gallatin, Henry, and Trimble counties. It took the name Carroll to honor Charles Carroll of Carrollton, the last living signer of the Declaration of Independence. The county seat, Carrollton, was originally laid out in 1792 as Port William. It sat at the meeting point of the Kentucky and Ohio rivers, which meant every bit of early life in this place flowed through those two currents. Settlements came early. Prestonville was chartered in 1797 and acted as a landing point where travelers switched between the Kentucky and the Ohio. Ghent appeared a little later. Before it was Ghent, it was actually called a settlement called McCool's Creek in 1809. The name changed to honor the Treaty of Ghent, which ended the War of 1812. Tradition says that the U.S. politician Henry Clay visited the area in 1860 and suggested the name change himself. Other communities formed as river commerce and agriculture pushed inland. Sanders grew around a mill. English took its name from Captain James W. English, a War of 1812 veteran who owned the land. Worthville became a legitimate crossroads, later incorporating after getting its first post office in 1847. Smaller settlements like Locust and Easterday filled in gaps with schools, churches, and small stores. The Masterson House in Carrollton, built in 1792, is the oldest surviving brick residence along the Ohio River between Cincinnati and Louisville. It was constructed by James and Sarah Masterson, early settlers who were part of the original Port William town site. The house is a rare example of Federal-style frontier brickwork, with its original stone foundation and much of its early timber framing still intact. It stood just a short walk away from the early ferry landing and served as a landmark for river travelers for more than 2 centuries. Today, it's one of the best preserved pieces of the county's earliest settlement period. By the mid-1800s, Carrollton had become one of the world's largest tobacco markets. That sounds like I'm exaggerating, but there are records backing it up. River shipping, warehouses, and later the railroad made tobacco the county's economic driver. When the L&N Railroad reached Carrollton in 1868, it locked the town into a regional trade network. When Carrollton was operating one of the world's largest tobacco markets, the scene around town looked nothing like a rural county today. Auctioneers moved through the warehouses in fast-paced circuits, calling bids while growers from across the region crowded the catwalk. Buyers came up the river from Louisville and Cincinnati, taking rooms in local hotels during auction weeks. The riverfront filled with wagons, later trucks, lined up with graded tobacco. It explains why Carrollton built so many hotels, warehouses, and storefronts for a town of its size. During the Civil War, Confederate raiders came through and robbed the Southern Bank of Kentucky in Carrollton. They also stole General William Butler's presentation sword. Butler himself was already a national figure by then. He'd fought in the War of 1812 and the Mexican War, and eventually ran as the Democratic candidate for vice president in 1848. His father, Percival Pierce Butler, served under George Washington and Lafayette, and later became Kentucky's first adjutant general, and their family home from 1859 still stands in General Butler State Park. Worthville rose and fell with the railroad. When the Louisville, Cincinnati, and Lexington line made Worthville a crew change point, the place grew fast. Boarding houses, mills, and stores came with it. When the railroad reorganized decades later, the boom collapsed. The 1937 Ohio River flood hit Carrollton and Prestonville harder than almost anywhere else that century. Water pushed far past the normal riverfront and into downtown Carrollton, shutting down businesses and forcing evacuations across low-lying streets. Prestonville took the brunt of it. Entire blocks went underwater, and some houses were lifted off their foundations and carried downstream. High water marks from 1937 still appear on older brick buildings along the riverfront, and the flood remains one of the defining natural disasters in the county. The industrial era pushed Carroll County in a different direction. Big employers like North American Stainless and Dow Chemical settled in, turning the county into a modern manufacturing hub. Agriculture never disappeared, but tobacco eventually did slip away. The shift was real enough that Carrollton had to transition from being a river town to a regional service center. The hospital, the schools, the park, even the community college branch helped anchor the county through the change. And then tragedy in 1988. A church bus returning from Kings Island to Radcliffe was struck head-on by a wrong-way pickup on I-71. The crash ruptured the bus's fuel tank, and the inside ignited almost instantly. 27 people died, most of them being teenagers. More than 30 others were injured. The investigation forced national changes to school bus safety, including fire retardant seating, better emergency exits, and protected fuel systems. Carroll County carries that event in a way that's really hard to describe. I think about it every time I'm on 71 passing by that plaque. But it's why transportation standards look so different today. General Butler State Resort Park came together over time, pooling from the Butler family land in later editions. It covers 791 acres, includes a 30-acre lake, and brings in more than 200,000 visitors a year. The Butler Turpin House inside the park preserves the family's frontier and antebellum story in a way that's unusually intact for Kentucky. With folklore, residents talk about the Coon Ridge Ghost, a figure that supposedly appears along Coon Ridge Lane. It's one of those stories that I've seen show up in Facebook groups and other local blogs. Today, Carroll County has a little over 10,000 people. Carrollton remains the center of everything. Ghent stays quiet along the river. Prestonville holds its ground at the mouth of the Kentucky River. Sanders, Worthville, English, and the other small communities keep their own character. Between the factors, the river, the hills, and the park, the county functions like a small, self-contained world. So, that's Carroll County. What'd I get wrong this time?